overview and hopefully something that will inspire people to look at the tools that we use for work and think about how they can be repurposed for art. I'm going to have a bunch of tips and stuff and links that I'll be throwing in the Slack afterwards. If any of the stuff that's in here was kind of interesting, and I encourage everyone to check all this stuff out. So, my interest in this topic began when I saw Cohesion Theater's production of Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere in May 2016. This show, for reasons that I can tell you at the bar later, got me thinking a lot about the ways that technology can be used to augment and enhance live performance. And so I started thinking about cool effects that I could design using JavaScript. And a couple of the things that inspired me at first were, this is a guy, Kenji Saito, on CodePen, and he has these things where these WebGL particles will rearrange into different shapes. And I thought, wouldn't it be neat if you had a character like projected on a screen with their face like made of particles, and then when they got angry, the particles would just explode outwards like that. I'll have links to these things, these CodePens, in the Slack. They're really cool and fun to play around with, and his work is really amazing. So I tried doing a bunch of things like this, and what I found was that there was no way to do this with the webcam that would make like 60 frames per second. And so I shelved this for a while, and then around fall of 2017, something happened. Apple released a phone that had a very unusual set of settings. So in particular, the infrared camera and the dot projector were two pieces of hardware that didn't show up very much in consumer hardware before this, and they enabled me to build a demo where I could actually read the user's face at 60 frames per second. I don't have that demo working right now, but I have another one, which I'll show you in a bit. So this was really fun. I was like, okay, awesome, I'm gonna take this to a theater company and demo it, and I proceeded to do absolutely nothing for 8 months. And then last summer, my roommate approached me and said, hey, there's a production of Rocky Horror Show going on in the fall, do you want to be in it? And I was like, absolutely, I love this show. But also I was like, you know, there's a situation where I think that I might be able to use this technology to make a cool effect. So for those who are unfamiliar, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, the movie version, begins with this really iconic shot of a pair of disembodied lips on a black background singing the opening song. Now this is, a lot of people love this, this part of the movie, but it can never be done on stage because it's, you know, impossible. Unless, you know, you can do something like this. So, using the Unity engine and its support for ARKit on the iPhone, I was able to code up something that would control a mouth, basically, of a 3D model, using the blend shapes and 3D data that comes from the sensor. The latency is a little bit bad here. When it goes directly over HDMI, it's better, you know. So I showed this to I demoed this for the production team. They really liked it. They asked me if I could do some more projections. And I guess 2.5 years after I originally had the idea, we actually got to use it. So we used it for a pre-show announcement, where we had the actors playing Magenta backstage. And she would be talking into the phone while also in the microphone. There she is. Now, just to make sure that everybody knew that this was live and not some pre-recorded stunt, we had her actually call out people who were in the audience that night, just so people would know that we weren't like faking this whole thing. So, this was a lot of fun. This is the first thing I've ever done like this. But this didn't involve JavaScript, and I imagine that, like, since we're at a JavaScript meetup, you'd want to see those things, right? All right. So the first thing that I did that actually involved JavaScript was an effect for that same intro song, Science Fiction Double Feature. Now the song name drops a lot of like old sci-fi B movies, and I thought it'd be cool because a lot of people aren't familiar with those movies anymore. I thought it'd be cool to sort of like chop, get clips of them and chop them up and them all along as the lyrics were being sung, and like match each one up with the lyric where it's mentioned. So this was, a lot of fun to put together, but then when we got actually into practicing, we ran into an issue. So, getting away the answer here. The problem that we ran into was that sometimes, when you're working with a rock band, the tempos can change a little bit. That's just the way that rock bands work. And you can't guarantee that it's always going to be the same number of beats per minute every night. So I had planned for them to be playing at 110 beats per minute, and if they were off by like a few beats per minute, then like by the end of the song, like the video would have finished 5 seconds early or 5 seconds too late. And sometimes the tempo could even change in the middle of the song. So this is, a rock musical. I can't work against this. I had to find a way to work with this. So what I did was I talked to my my board operator, the guy who was manning the laptop during the show, and I was like, what I want you to do is tap on a key in time with the music. So let me see where this is going. And then I wrote a little bit of JavaScript. This is a bit simplified, but this is basically the gist of it. I added a key down listener. I kept track of the time since the last tap in seconds. I had divided by 5,000. And then I kept a list of those time intervals. I would add the new one and remove the old one. I would average those, divide them into 60 to get beats per minute. And then with HTML5 video, you can adjust the playback rate of the video while it is playing. And so, I had like 5 to tap in. So if I go really fast, you'll see it'll start to speed up. And if I go really slow, it slows down. And this allowed us to have the video speed up to catch up or slow down in time with the music. And this is the kind of thing where if I was only working with video, I wouldn't be able to do anything like this. I would have either had to cut the effect or say, oh, it'll look like crap, but whatever. But when you actually have programming, you can design things that can help you deal with situations in theater tech that other people would have much more difficulty with. So, let's go back. This one? No. There we go. No. Sorry. So later in the show, there was some monitor. Oh, is that you guys? Whoa. So later in the show, there was some monitor footage. That's basically like I need to project some stuff that looked like it was coming from like a surveillance camera or a CCTV monitor. Now I could have done this with something like Adobe After Effects, but I didn't know anything about Adobe After Effects at the time. And so what I used instead was a really awesome library called Seriously.js. This is a library that you can take video and you can put various filters on it. Here's a couple of them. And the really awesome thing is that it can actually work with the camera. And you can take these various filters and you can increase the amount there. Yeah, there we go. You can probably barely see that. And you can play around with these filters, you can layer them on top of each other. And when you look at the actual code behind it, it's not super complicated either. So, you just instantiate an object for the library. You feed it a source, which is usually a video element. You select one of the effects that was in that dropdown, and you instantiate an object for that. You need to grab a canvas because Seriously.js uses WebGL to actually create these effects. And so you need to have a canvas that you're going to render out to. You need to take the source, the video, hand it off to the effect, take what comes out of the effect, and hand it off to the target. And then when you call seriously.go, it starts the effect. And this callback is called like every frame in case you need to. Some of the effects have like time-based things where they need to like randomize the film grain or something like that. So you can provide that kind of stuff there. So this is something I highly recommend everyone check out. I will have links to this in Slack. It's a really fun library and it gives you a lot of cool abilities that you might not have been able to do with other ways. But the real crazy thing though is that it can do this with a quick little change. You can do this with an actual webcam. And even tools like After Effects can't handle live video. they require like time to render things out. And so this gives you like an ability to do something that like, normal video editors wouldn't be able to do on their own. So after Rocky ended, the actress who played Janet, Dami Vale, asked me if I could help out with projections for the next show that she was doing, which was called Thank You Dad. So this is a show about Jim Jones, the pastor from who's responsible for the Jonestown Massacre, the one where 900 people died by drinking a lot of people think it's Kool-Aid. I think been involved with the show. I know it's Flavor Aid. Big point of contention. So this was a one-man show. It was starring the guy who had played Dr. Frankenfurter as Jim Jones. And this was a very interesting show to work on. I knew that I was going to have to take a different approach to it than I had for Rocky. For Rocky, what I did was, for all of my cues, I basically used macOS's Spaces feature. And I had a single, like, full-screen web page for each cue, and they would start out black, and then if you press the space bar, it would run the cue. And so I would hand this off to my board operator and have him work with it. But the problem that we would run into is that, on macOS, if you do a 4-finger swipe, it takes you over. But if you don't swipe hard enough, it doesn't always go. And so, because the screen was always black, you couldn't tell like if it had gone or not. And this is on me. This was a bad user experience design. And so I needed to come. It was. But I knew that I needed something better, something that gave me more visibility into what was going on. And especially because this was a show that was a lot more complicated. The show had 128 sound cues. That won't go away. Whatever. This show had 128 sound cues, 30-something lighting cues, 30-something projection cues. And so this is like a clip of like us handling the most difficult parts where we had to call like a number of sound cues all in a row with projections and lights at the same time. So the other thing too that was going on, in addition to having way more cues, we had one cue where we had 3 projectors running at once. We were projecting images of people who died during Jonestown onto the back, right, and left walls of the house. So this was a much more complicated setup. It was way more cues, and I needed something way more like reliable and robust to work with. So the setup here, this is a picture from the booth. You definitely can't see this from this far away, but there were 2 Thunderbolt displays plugged in here, one for the projector in the front and one for the projector that was on house right. I tried plugging in HDMI for the one on house left, and my poor little laptop just couldn't handle 4 displays, so I needed to find some way to deal with that. I ended up plugging the last one into my iPad Pro and running the last projection screen off of that, which meant I had to remote control an iPad from the laptop while doing all this other stuff. So to solve this, what I came up with was, I was kind of inspired by Reveal.js, the thing that I'm using right now. So Reveal.js, for those who aren't familiar, it has a notes view that you can even run on another device. And what's happening here is I can send commands to a node server that's running on my computer using WebSockets, and then it will send those commands to the page and make it do things. So I used a similar approach here to create a way to control all of these screens. And so this is what my control screen looked like. I had a list of all the cues, and I could click this to stage a cue, and then click it again to make it go. The resolution on here makes it look really small. It's easier to read when it's actually on screen. But this made it much easier to see, like, okay, I have a cue that's staged up, which one is it? And if we had to skip a cue, we could do that. If we had to go back and do a cue over. If something accidentally ended up on the projector, I needed to turn all of them off. I had this big bail button. Kill everything, which was very useful. So the way that this worked, I started out with a list of all the cues. This is them. Each cue had a type, so some of them were just videos that because at this point I was starting to learn After Effects. Some of them were pages that needed to be loaded in iframes, and some of them were special custom things, like this live thing that I'll get to in a moment, or the final montage, that 3-sided projection thing that I was talking about before. So that screen that I just showed you, the control panel, is an Angular 1 app. I know I should be using the new Angular stuff, I'm sorry. But basically I had three functions on the scope, one which would send a new cue for staging, meaning like, hey, like pull up this video and start trying to load it so that it's ready when we need to call it. One for sending the actual like, hey, play this cue. And I had another one that would tell all the screens to refresh in case something got wrong. And then I had, of course, the thing to send a queue to bail if I need to do that. So on the server side, it was, again, some more socket.io stuff. Basically, I would listen for any commands that came from the control page, and I would just relay that same command up to the display pages. And so you have staging to stage a queue, play to play a queue, and refresh to refresh all the displays. So on the display pages, the ones that were actually like showing on the projectors, each of them had a different ID in the query string that they would use to figure out like, oh, I'm the front projector, I'm the left projector, I'm the right projector, so that only the front projector would show front projector things, etc. And so the first thing that they do is they figure out which projector am I, and then after that they start listening for the staging cues, the playing cues, and the refresh commands, which is just a location reload. And then, as you can see, as I'm like rapidly scrolling through this, I basically just use jQuery and faded things in and out. A lot of this stuff was like just basic, like stuff that's in the browser already. And one thing that's really neat is like the amount of power that the browser just gives you without even having a framework. There's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with just some keyboard handlers and some math. So this last thing I'll be showing, this was one of the most technically difficult ones to pull off. And this was, one of the directors basically asked me if there was a way, while Jones was giving like a particularly like megalomaniacal part of his speech, if there was a way that we could project him like Wizard of Oz style, right behind his head, like live. And I was like, yes. It's not going down? Oh, come on. There you go. Watch this guy. It takes him a second to realize what's going on. And he's like, what? So, yeah, there you go. So that was all live, and the way that it works was that basically, if you look carefully at this podium, this was taken before we actually got it all set up, there's a little thing here to put an iPhone in, and then we pulled up that runner over it so that nobody could see it. The iPhone had its display thing turned always on and was turned to a Safari page, which was running WebRTC, and we relayed the stuff back here to the laptop so it could show on the screen. So WebRTC is really awesome. It's something that I'm going to give a talk about like all on its own in the future because it deserves like a full talk. But I want to go over just a little bit of it right now. So RTC stands for real-time communication. This is a browser API that came out along with a lot of other HTML5 stuff, and it's now in all browsers. It has two main purposes or genres of things that it can do. It can grab the user's webcam and microphone feed and then do stuff with it. And then it can send streams of audio, video, and data between users directly over peer-to-peer, so like directly from laptop to laptop with no server in between. So this is something that people can use to build like video conferencing apps. It's really, really neat. The kinds of things that this enables, like you can build your own Skype now, pretty much, with an asterisk, which I will explain in my next talk. But I do want to go over that first part, getting the user's microphone and camera. So this is a very simple thing to set up. Basically, you start out with some constraints. You just say like, okay, I want audio but not video, or I want video but not audio, or here I'm saying audio true, so I want audio. For the video, I'm specifying that I want a minimum width and a maximum width and a minimum height and maximum height to like try and say which video feed I want. And if you're on a mobile phone, you can say like facing mode user to get the selfie cam, or facing mode environment to get the other camera. Then you go navigator.media devices.getUserMedia, you pass in constraints. This will then ask the user, hey, can I use your microphone and camera? If they say yes, this returns a promise. I'm using the wait here to make it simpler. If they say yes, then you'll get a stream back, and you can take a video element, any video element on your page, and set its source object to that stream. And once you've done that, You can do whatever you want with it. So here we are back again. There's all y'all. Say hi. So like I mentioned before, there's seriously JS if you want, or you can just apply random CSS effects if you want. If you know how to do anything with like CSS transforms or CSS filters, which are kind of new but pretty well supported, you can just now, hey, you're a video editor. Well, congratulations. So this is really empowering stuff. It's really cool to be able to take one of your skills that you might have for your job and reapply it somewhere else. There's also something really cool I got to be careful with. Where are the speakers in here? All right, this is some feedback. Here we go. So, yeah, so you can use the user's microphone as well, and with the web audio API, which also deserves its own talk, you can do really cool stuff and really cool effects with that live as well. So these are some of the really neat tools that the browser gives you, and some cool ways that you can use them to make art. Oh, come on, play it, aren't you? Oh. Yes. Okay. So yeah, I'm at your.com.